And hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Point Blank Podcast. I'm your host, Dan.
And I'm your co-host, Dom.
As always, guys, an action-packed podcast for you today. We're going to be discussing a lot of things that have happened over the weekend in the United Kingdom and overseas. Of course, this includes the Chagos Island deal. We've also got more mass protests that have occurred and a lot more, including a UK cop facing the sack after mocking the law on a Ring doorbell. Interesting stuff today, eh?
Yeah, very interesting. You know, even when the police are starting to see the ridiculousness of these laws, I think that's a really telling sign.
Exactly. Shall we start with the Chagos Island deal? Essentially, news has come out today, of course, that Labour have been forced to admit that the Chagos surrender cost 10 times what Keir Starmer initially claimed. Now, for those of you just watching, the Chagos Island deal in a summary was diabolical in itself anyway, but the developments today suggest it's 10 times worse for the taxpayer. Now, on the 22nd of May 2025, the UK and Mauritius signed a treaty transferring full sovereignty over the Chagos archipelago, including Diego Garcia, to Mauritius. In exchange, the UK retains rights to maintain its critical joint UK-US military base on Diego Garcia for an initial 99-year lease, extendable for another 40 years and then possibly beyond. Now, the payment terms, and this was branded as a disgrace. The UK were going to be paying Mauritius £165 million annually for the first 3 years, then £120 million annually for the following 10 years. After that, the amount will be adjusted for inflation. And the net present value of the deal was estimated to be £3.4 billion. Now, Dom, this was already again said that it was an absolute diabolical deal in the first place, regardless, just because of Chagos and its strategic positioning and giving away sort of sovereignty of that place.
Yeah, it's a deal that never needed to be made in the first place.
Yeah.
I think that's the key there. This is just completely giving away our strategic positions in these quite vital places, sort of geopolitically.
But whilst that was an absolute farce in itself, the developments this morning, and as you can see, Labour have been forced to admit that the true cost of the Chagos Island surrender deal is actually 10 times higher than what the Prime Minister initially claimed. So we've seen £3.4 billion, so that figure is now close to £35 billion. That's the true total of what this is going to cost us.
Yeah, it's a complete sham, you know. The UK is not in the best place when it comes to the finances anyway. Right now, we're sitting at an annual a debt of £2.7 trillion. Interest on them payments are up to £112 billion annually. To put that into perspective, Dan, that's over double the national defence budget. So all of our great military, divisions, we're paying double just on interest. Wow. And right now, it equates to about 8.3% of public spending just on interest. So all we're doing is adding more debt to the pile. And it only goes one way. We're going to be a bankrupt nation if we keep going this way. And we need some serious reform, serious cuts if we're going to reduce that debt.
I agree completely. Obviously, following this news now, we found out about this in particular deal. This has obviously been met with critics and people in opposition. And essentially, Kevin Badenoch has stated that it's bad enough Starmer and Reeve's economic mismanagement has created a £50 billion black hole in the public finances, prolonging the cost of living crisis. Now our research has uncovered the government's own figures showing Labour's Chagos surrender is costing the country another £35 billion. Add that to their £50 billion black hole, and it's clear when Labour negotiates, Britain loses.
Yeah, it's very interesting to see what their sort of mindset behind this deal is. I mean, we didn't have to surrender the Chagos Islands because we had control over them. So what was their thinking in just completely giving away, our sovereign land and giving all this money away to this foreign nation, giving them their independence, but we still want to hold our military bases there. There's not a lot of logical sense within the deal. This is where you need business people who understand business in government, and these types of deals won't happen. It's very easy for a government to spend other people's money. That's the key here. There is no incentive to reduce costs when you're spending other people's money, I think that's the reason why these deals are so terrible for the British taxpayer.
Well, it's the taxpayer going to be footing the bill, which is absolutely horrendous and quite disgusting. And this is just one thing added to a list of things that Keir Starmer has lied about, backtracked on, and of course sold out the British people for, and of course increased our expenditure to their mess, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Now, have you seen the petition that's, of course, been going around? And that's, of course, with regard to calling for a general election and ousting Keir Starmer. At the time of recording this podcast, now, we can see that the call and immediate general election has 615,314 signatures. And as you can see there, Parliament will consider this for a debate when, of course, it gets to 100,000 signatures. This is going to be a debate. But 615,319 people on an online petition, which doesn't probably, again, a lot of people not necessarily that tech savvy or know about this petition that hate Keir Starmer. So these numbers are going to increase. And in fact, look how quick that's going up on the live count.
It's already gone
as
up 30.
as we're speaking about this. And I'll leave that there. We'll see where we end up after this segment. But yeah, you can see that there's a massive public frustration with regard to Keir Starmer.
Yeah.
And actually, his approval rating is minus 45.
I didn't even realise that was possible.
I didn't think that could be possible. So how long has Keir Starmer got left in power?
Well, I think this is a symptom of the UK and how they're feeling, This has been the most disastrous, political party in, I think, British history. In a year, even in the first couple of months, he completely lost the backing of the UK populace after his disastrous dealing with the riots last year. I think the riots and the protests, not really riots, the protests this year are coming from a completely different place. I think you're seeing a lot more women who are speaking up against sexual violence.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're seeing a lot more sort of old and young people, families that are genuinely concerned. These aren't just far-right people as the media put them. Mm-hmm. These are just genuine middle people who aren't really, far left or far right. They're just concerned people. They're people in the centre who want change. And this is the symptom of that. And not only have I seen this, I have signed it as well.
Yeah,
so.
I've signed it as well. And how long? I mean, I've seen some murmurs as well from the Labour Party that, of course, you see reports and you take things with a pinch of salt, but they are coming from the MSM. But inside Labour, we've seen a lot of an internal revolt, of course, with regard to the whole Palestine dealing from Labour itself. But other things, we've seen a lot of Labour MPs actually go against what Keir Starmer has said on numerous different things within Parliament. And I've also read that they're giving him another 6 months to see what happens. And if it gets worse, then they're going to try and force a change of leadership for their party. Mm-hmm. Is that a real possibility? And in your opinion, do you think Keir Starmer will last the full 5 years term? Obviously, he's 1 year in. Do you reckon he will last another 4 years in power of the Labour Party?
Well, I think he's on thin ice right now. I think even, as you said, from Labour, we've had revolts within the Labour Party. I remember one recently that was due to the cuts of the benefits, which, I might be, for, but people in Labour are against it. We could see a change in leadership. But to get a immediate general election, this isn't the first time that there's been a petition for this.
Yeah.
The first one was shot down straight away.
Oh, it was rubbish. I think they got over 1 million anyway, didn't they?
Yeah, it's true. And this one again, how many petitions do we have to sign for them to genuinely take this into consideration? Because realistically, if they shoot this one down, we can just start another one.
Yeah.
And then start another one. And we can just keep going until we get our voices heard. And you can see how fast that's going up now.
Ticking pretty quickly. And to be fair, it's only 8:30 in the morning, which suggests everything you need to know. But yeah, Keir Starmer certainly on thin ice. And it's not just one thing, but one thing that people are, of course, outraged about, and what you just touched upon, was with regard to the illegal migrants and people, of course, coming in and being housed in these hotels and people's communities. We've seen an uproar from British citizens, not far-right thugs, ordinary British citizens over the last couple of weeks. And this weekend was exactly the same, but actually there was a protest being held in 14 different locations across the country over the weekend, from London to Leeds, from Birmingham to Norwich. There was lots showing their disgust for the way that the government are currently treating these illegal migrants coming in over on a boat and being housed into these hotels. And we've seen, of course, what has happened over the last couple of weeks with these sexual assaults and rapes and all of these kind of things that have been happening coming out of these hotels, or the individuals staying in these hotels. I just wanted to show you maybe a bit of footage again from over the weekend, and yeah, it's rather great to see. This is Epping once again, by the way.
Come on.
But yeah, Epping still, of course, showing they're still out protesting in the numbers. And I just want you to look how many women are there. It's absolutely fantastic to see, isn't it? Have a watch.
I'm in Epping, and now the protest is on its way to the town hall. Around 300 now here. Very peaceful. Women, children. Right. I don't think the Home Office can ignore this for much longer. You simply cannot put unchecked, unverified foreign men near a school.
Starmer, you should be ashamed of yourself, mate. Ashamed.
Well said. No, we've even got the dogs. Far right dogs, that's what they're going to get labelled.
Yeah, far right.
Yeah.
Far wrong.
Exactly. The people of Epping are not giving up. Again, reiterate, every week until that is shut. And if you've got a child in that school, who could blame you for being here tonight?
So as stated, there was protests just like that across the weekend. Of course, we've seen outside Canary Wharf again, and we shared a clip last time of they're called the Pink Ladies, the ladies that were in pink. They were out there again over the weekend outside the Britannia Hotel in Canary Wharf. Yeah, what are your thoughts on all of this?
Yeah, I think the scale of these protests is massive. You know, we've even got places like Manchester, Liverpool as well. I saw massive protests there.
Which is usually quite a left-leaning city, isn't it?
Yeah,
you know,
it's true.
Liverpool, which is also, you know, goes to show that there is the pendulum swinging, I suppose.
But what this shows is it's a bipartisan issue. It doesn't matter whether you're left or right.
Yeah.
It matters whether, you know, if you feel, negatively about this, realistically, what we can call it is an invasion. If you feel bad about the invasion and you feel a sense of disgust, a sense of a lack of patriotism, and really the government's wrongdoing in this and their responsibility in causing this, that's why it's bipartisan. You don't have to be left nor right to understand that, as this man put, having unchecked, unverified, illegal foreign men right next to primary schools, in fact, anywhere in a community, is going to be a natural, it's going to be a danger to their civilians.
Yeah, no, exactly. I see it. I see it massively.
Yeah.
From those protests, you seen a bit kick off between a migrant being tasered, did you?
Yeah. This, I'm not too sure where it was, but you have to hang on to this one because the ending is incredible. So there was a bit of a tension between some of the protesters and this illegal migrant.
This one?
Yes, this is the one. But you can.
All on video. Your face is all over the video. Please, him. Holy.
What are you doing, mate? What are you doing, bro? This guy's fucking... Get out of here, mate. Huh? Huh? Mate, get up. Mate, roll in the front, do it now. Roll in the front, do it now.
Oh, mate.
Are you alright?
What? No, I'm fine.
Is that
I'm
your
fine.
blood?
Huh?
Is that your blood? You're covered in blood.
Where?
It's all. Yeah.
Do it now.
I don't know. I just heard commotion and
Thank you for coming out.
I thought you were trying to silence you guys.
He
you know
was.
what I mean?
He literally, he
Fucking
came
hell.
up out of nowhere, started ripping signs off there. Oh God, I'm shaking. Started ripping signs off there, tried to throw them at us, and then he just started.
Why the fuck am I covered
He
in
just
blood?
started attacking us. He just started attacking us out of nowhere.
Roll in the front, do it now.
This is not my blood. Whose blood is this?
Excuse me, I got everything on video.
What the fuck? Mate, just play that for me.
Yeah, sorry.
What a fucking retard.
I think we think that the blood on his hands is from when he ripped those signs. I think he's cut his hands on those.
Yeah, excuse me, sir.
Just stand over there for me.
Sorry, mate. Sorry, mate.
So
It's all,
we can see this man here was attacked by this gentleman, this doctor or engineer, as the left media like to put it. Yeah, so he was attacked before. I think he tried to grab his bag as well.
Yeah.
Obviously, you had some patriots try to constrain him until the police arrived. And yeah, I don't think it's the smartest idea attacking a police van. I
Yeah,
must say.
no, it seems totally out of control, and that anger you see in him in that moment, of course, is diabolical to see. And
Yeah.
the police had no choice but to sort of taser him.
Yeah, it's very interesting. There's no sort of like logical discussion nor kind of debate. It's just pure rage.
Is there any context on who he is? Well, obviously he's a migrant, but he's not from a hotel, is he?
Yeah,
He's
there's little context on who he is. I
Yeah.
mean, clearly he's foreign national.
Yeah.
I'm not too sure of the legality of his residency.
Yeah.
But, you know, regardless, I mean, you don't need foreign men attacking our British
Yeah,
citizens
exactly.
in any case. I think that's the important thing here. But yeah, he was tasered and then jailed as well. I think he's getting charged with something, but it would be interesting to see how that unfolds. But really, this is what you're seeing. You know, you are seeing people stand up, and you know they don't stand up with their voices. They don't peacefully protest. They come with violence, and that's the real key difference here. Is one side is not violent. You know, these protests that are going on across country are not violent, and any way the media tries to portray it, they are not violent. They are peaceful protests, but you are seeing a violent reaction, and this is from the supposed tolerant left. So I think that's quite an interesting sort of ideological difference between the two, is that they're taking these protests personally, and obviously that's how they react to it, as a sort of a personal attack on them rather than sort of a nationwide symptom of issues, and that's really the key difference there.
Yeah, I mean, last week we heard about the one in, one out deal. Of course, started to come into effect. We've seen, of course, video footage from the Labour government showing that they are detaining and deporting. And Keir Starmer said his quote saying, "I said I would get control of our borders, and I'm doing exactly that." However, you've got some numbers for us with regard to what has happened since the one in, one out migrant deal has come into effect, and it doesn't actually look too pretty nor flattering for Labour.
No, not at all. I mean, since he has announced this sort of deal with France, there's been over 1,100 people come on small boats into the UK, crossing from a safe country to a safe country illegally, and I think they've deported around 50 people. So, look, I'm not a mathematician, but a one in, one out deal means that surely there should be 1,100 people deported. Well, I'm not, you know, the numbers have to be equal, right?
Yeah, no, exactly.
So it's not 1,100 people in, 50 people out.
Yeah,
you know?
no.
That'd be a 20-to-1 deal.
Well, Yvette Cooper was when she was interviewed after we've seen these detainment videos and deported videos, she didn't reveal the numbers, did she? She didn't say that how many was there. The reporters were like, the interviewers were like, well, we can see that it's not actually that many people actually being deported. And then she was like, well, I'm not going to disclose those figures, etc., etc. And then we're obviously seeing that there through the figures that you've just reported on. 1,100 in a space of a week. That's a lot of people. Imagine 1,100 people in a room.
Yeah, it's massive. You know, that's like the size of a whole school. You know, and the figures are quite damning because year on year we're nearly 9,000 higher than we were at the same point last year. So the figures aren't getting better; they're getting worse. You know, last year we were about 17,000 at the same time last year. Yeah. Now we're at nearly 26,000.
Wow.
And again, you know, they're not making this crisis any better.
26,000 people. You know, that's crazy.
I'm only halfway through the year.
And only halfway through, yeah. Mad. That is actually crazy. However, whilst we are seeing a lot of protests against it, and of course I do think the majority of people are really against what's going on within the United Kingdom in this invasion, so to speak, there is some schools actually going out there and encouraging school children to write Valentine's Day cards to these illegal migrants.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely sick and twisted. I don't really understand what St George's C of E Primary Academy.
Church of England School.
Yes.
Church of England School. Okay. Can you tell the viewers what has happened with this? Obviously, Valentine's Day was in February, but we got news yesterday. It came out via the Telegraph with regard to this school being exposed for this. And
that's correct. Yeah. So the first thing that got exposed was the actual Valentine's cards that the kids were made to make. And then there was a bit of sort of controversy around the legitimacy of the story. But since then, there's been a little bit of sort of investigative journalism. And what they've done is they've actually found the sort of documents that this school made that they used to their children and to inform the parents of what they were doing. So here are the documents here. I'm not going to read through all of it, but you can see it says, you know, so this primary school had a special refugee day on the 14th of February, including hearings from parents who were willing to share their experiences. They said things like, it was a truly remarkable and heartfelt day as we delivered our stories to the parents and children who have experienced life as refugees. They generously shared their journeys and experiences of coming to the UK, providing us with profound insights into their lives. So it goes on to say the children express their support through creative means. This is where the Valentine's Day cards come in. And really, it's just a perverse kind of nature of this whole thing. You know, why are you making little kids make Valentine's cards to undocumented illegal men who are technically invading our country?
That is really sick. I mean, there's one thing to say, I think even writing them Christmas cards or something like that is bad enough. But Valentine's Day, that's like an intimate thing that you would do for a relationship in terms of a couple, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, you could debate all day what Valentine's Day means to individuals, but usually in my mind, what do you buy? If you've got a girlfriend, what do you buy on you buy her something on Valentine's Day. You don't buy your mum something. You don't buy your friend something.
Yeah.
It's usually something to do with like love and intimacy between your partner. Mm-hmm. And getting little children, even to write Valentine's Day cards, is interesting for me in a thing, but writing them to asylum seekers, grown men, is disgusting.
What does that do for the psyche of these recipients of these cards as well? You know, they're getting cards from between
children.
5 and 10-year-olds saying, you know, with big heart-shaped and messages of love. Wow. What does that do for them? You know. What does that make them feel? Like, oh, these children love me. Well, maybe I should go, grab one in a park somewhere. What are the implications here? I think it's very perverse on both a shallow level, and I think the deeper sense is even worse. Yeah. And I really, really question the sort of the higher up figures in this school and what they're thinking.
That's that's what it's always down to, is these. This is the problem with the school system, is that, and I think some people. I've seen it time and time again with loads of different things, whether it just be clips on X of like a teacher with an ideology of something. Well, she's lesbian and loves to go to LGBTQ plus fairs. But shoving that propaganda, that her ideologies down 30 school children in her classroom is a dangerous thing. You know, you're going to school, your parents are dropping children off to school to get an unbiased education in things, not to learn ideologies off a teacher. And that certainly looks like it's coming from the top down to the bottom and saying, well, refugees are welcome to me as a one individual, as a head teacher, or whoever it may be. She has these values and beliefs. Let's now go brainwash the children who have a very open mind. Again, I don't think that their parents would have ever been consulted in this process about, oh, can my child, I bet they would never ask, can my child write a Valentine's Day card to an illegal migrant living in a hotel?
Yeah, I think the issue here is that most of the parents are from refugee status.
Oh,
which,
okay, maybe that's a bit different, I suppose, but
it's weird because, you know, they're still perversing it in a way that's kind of in a sort of relationship sense, or, you know, and I think there's a sort of insidious underlying tone to this whole story. Which I personally, I agree with your point. You know, education should be completely unbiased. It should sort of foster the creative nature of children, not try to spin a perverse twist on these sort of celebrations we have in this society, like Valentine's Day, which really, you're right, should be reserved, you know, for older people. You know, kids should never be thinking about relationships and things like that. Not even relationships with bloody, you know, invasive refugees. It should be directed. It shouldn't be directed at all, really.
And it's important to just note, by the way, people would say, well, secondary school children have relationships. We're talking about primary school here. This isn't our secondary school. It's not 16-year-old children, you know, who are going, you know, learning of the birds and the bees and may have a partner of themselves. We're not talking about it. We're talking about children 5 to 10 years old that are being wrote this sort of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why this is a public outrage right now. It's a national story. It's just incredible that they thought this was a good idea. And I don't think there was a lot of sort of pre-thought before they implemented this into the school.
Well, it's not the first time I've heard stuff coming out of our schools, which is really troubling. Like on, you know, national holidays, like talking. When Easter, like a few months ago, there was obviously reports coming out of a primary school at the time saying that they're banning Easter celebrations at the school to replace it with a refugee week and to not alienate or ostracize other children within the school because they come from different faiths. But it all comes back down to, no, you respect the tradition of the country that you're in and the school that's there. As I said time and time again, if you went to the UAE as a Christian, you wouldn't be pushing your values and stuff onto the school system out there. If you chose to live there, that's the country you go. You know it's going to be Islamic and you need to live by their sort of law and rules, if you like.
Yeah, of course. It comes down to just an underlying respect for the host nation that you live in.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we're sort of seeing a lack of. And you're right, you know, the school is really where this starts. There was that story not long ago about the National Pride Day. I think it was one of the primary schools or the high schools, but a girl came in a Union Jack dress.
And
she was turned away.
Oh,
so
there was outrage about that.
National pride is okay, but unless it's for the UK, unless it's for the host nation. So you're not allowed to be proud of the UK, which I think is really sort of backwards. I mean, we're not teaching, you know, the social fabric that builds this country together starts with a pride of nation. And that starts within the schools. The schools need to be, you know, teaching about the rich history of this country and saying to them, you know, and all these sort of underlying stories where these children are taught other things, you know, it starts to sort of seed that, it seeds the doubt in their mind very early on that they shouldn't be proud of their nation.
Yeah.
And then, okay, so what are they going to be proud of? Well, that's when they come in to propagandize. They use the diversity as our strength and, you know, things along that line. It's all very twist and insidious. And I think the deeper message there is quite bad.
That's why I'm very, you know, I haven't got children, but as someone who one day, I hope, if God can bless me to have children, then I would be scared to sometimes leave majority of my child's early life in terms of the molding of them with someone that I don't really know with the ideologies that they're sort of pushing on a day-to-day basis. It's quite scary.
Yeah.
You know, especially if you've got really left-leaning or someone with some wacky ideologies just coming up and trying to tell your children what to do. So I would certainly be looking at potentially the homeschooling route. But it's very, very scary, especially when you look at some of the other ideologies that some of these individuals may have that lean towards real far left activism. That could be very, very scary when you're talking about LGBT and trans and, you know, you can be whatever you want and all of these kind of things. Imagine a teacher saying to your child that you can be whatever you want from an early age. You know, when I was a kid, I wanted to be a shark. I was obsessed with sharks, you know. But imagine if my mum said, yeah, you can be a shark, and I identified as a shark. You know, I'm 5-year-old, you know, I'm going around saying I'm a shark, you know.
Yeah, it's very bad. And I think, you know, there were some stories out of California in the US that the teachers would not tell the parents if their kid came out as trans in school. So they would still push them down that route without informing the children, without informing the parents. And, you know, I know the UK is quite right-leaning on that subject as well, because we've banned puberty blockers for under 18s and things like that. But really, it's more just the propaganda around these sort of more tense issues in the UK regarding immigration. I think that's where, and you know, as future parents, we will have that responsibility to ensure that our children's education is exactly that, education, not propaganda.
Yeah, no, exactly. No, that's what they're trying to get to them young. That's what I'm saying. They try to get to them young, brainwash them early enough, and then all of a sudden they align with what the establishment want them to believe.
Because they're more impressionable at a young age. You know, when you can formulate their opinions, it takes a lot more sort of uncoding in that later adult life, and a lot of these opinions won't be theirs. They'll just be told the opinion that they should have.
Well, as a kid, you're very what's the word? You're very. When an adult tells you something, you remember when you were a child, when an adult told you something, it's gospel, right?
Yeah,
it's completely gospel. You'd be literally, you know, saying it word for word on anything.
Yeah.
You know, whatever an adult said was, completely the truth, that's it. And then you realise when you get a bit older, you actually realise that some adults have no idea what they're talking about. And there's that change and shift, and they go, actually, you're thick as mince. I mean, like, do you know what I mean? Like, they actually don't know nothing. I remember that myself. I'd always look at, like, your parents' friends, and they'll be like, oh, the adults, you got to listen to them. But then you realise, you're actually like, nah, I'm not going to be listening to. I'm going to be picking and choosing who I listen to and who I sort of quote. But, yeah, children are very impressionable from an early age.
You're right. And you know, we've seen a lot of things else happen as well, such as with the protests that have happened in the weekend. We've actually had a reform councillor that's been banned from attending the protests. So
wait, a reform councillor has been banned from attending a protest?
That's correct.
Any protest? What type of protest? Is it the Tommy Robinson one, or
just the local Save Britain protest? You know, with the British flags. Yes. So. We have a tweet here from Save Our Future and Our Kids, which is one of the groups that are organising these protests. It says, we completely respect and understand Councillor Claire Mackey-Brown's decision not to attend our peaceful protest this weekend. However, we are not happy that Reform have decided to stop her attending, not as a politician, but as a lifelong citizen of Falkirk's who deeply cares about our community. This protest is not political, it never has been. Unfortunately, we are being dragged into the same name-calling and division by Falkirk's trade union and Stand Up to Racism Scotland, who are wrongly accusing us of racism, hate and being far right simply for speaking up on the issues that matter to everyday people. So, very interesting. I don't know why Reform are taking such a left-leaning stance on this.
But I've seen a lot of their politicians come out publicly defending this, whether it be Nigel Farage, whether that be Lee Anderson on publicly on X. So why are they banning one of their own from attending the thing that they're advocating?
It makes no sense, does it?
It makes no sense, but it's just a list of weird things that's happening inside the Reform Party that I'm a bit like, what is your real agenda? What is your true agenda?
Yeah, we're seeing these inconsistencies about how they sort of push their policies and
surely
things like
you want your leaders to be there at the forefront of these peaceful protesters and say, no, look, here's my face. I ain't far right. I'm with the people. I'm with the people of my constituent.
Yeah.
And I stand with them as they're going through this, and I share their outrage and outcry that the Reform Party is supposed to stand for. So them banning him or her is diabolical.
Yeah,
I think a disgrace.
I think really it's an overreach of the party's sort of lockdown of their councillors and their MPs as well. But you're right, we are seeing MPs come out, such as Lee Anderson, in support of the protest, but you can't attend the protest. That doesn't really make any sense to me. I mean, how can you be supportive of the protest and yet not attend that protest?
Did it say who it came from in terms of who banned them, or was it just said, oh, Reform have banned this individual from attending the protest?
Just says Reform. Obviously, Claire Mackey-Brown was the Reform councillor.
And she came out and said this?
So it was to Save Our Future and Our Kids. So basically, they were trying to be in contact with her over her attendance, and then she replied to them saying that she couldn't go because of Reform's policies.
Wow. That's shocking. That really is shocking, to be fair.
Yeah.
I just wanted to touch upon something, still obviously within the UK, and with regard to protests, so to speak. But you may have seen the video footage of a police officer openly or knocking on someone's door and asking, are you attending a protest? And then mocking the law that he's trying to enforce, starts pissing himself. We're going to watch the footage. But this individual is now under investigation and could be sacked for this video footage. Let's go through it. It is pretty diabolical from our police in a way. I'll ask you a couple of questions after, but have a watch of this.
Hello, mate. You right?
Yeah, what's up?
Absolutely nothing, so don't panic. It's just a very quick one. I appreciate you're at work, but Warwickshire have asked me to come round and just basically, it's a load of bollocks, mate, but it's about this protest tomorrow in Warwickshire.
Yeah.
And just saying, obviously, that they're aware that you might be wanting to attend that planned protest, and obviously that's absolutely fine. You've got a freedom of speech, and that's no issues at all. And all they've asked me to do, mate, it sounds daft, so I apologise, and it's really woeful. It's not something I agree with, but I've been asked to do it. It's just to drop a leaflet about being involved in a protest. Actually, it sounds bad, but it is what it is.
Do me a favour. Take it back to them and
Yes,
write
mate.
back on it to them. Say, we will no longer be silenced and to fuck himself. From me, with love. Cheers. Thanks very much.
With love.
Yeah, with love. Yeah.
Cheers,
Because
dude.
the silent majority of Britain will no longer stay silent. Tell them that. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Nice one.
So yeah, there's a couple of questions from that. Obviously, that footage did go viral a little bit, and now the police, of course, have launched a probe into the police officer who told an anti-migrant protester the warning he was issued was a load of bollocks. I mean, I agree with the police officer about that. I mean, Warwickshire Police asking a guy about going to a protest.
Yeah.
Why does that have two police officers knocking on someone's door to ask him about a protest and give him a form about how he should behave at said protest? Is there not enough things to be dealing with in Warwickshire that the police should be freeing up their time to do so, firstly?
Yeah.
And then secondly, I mean, the fact that he's laughing about that as well, it means he won't be the only one that, of course, shares that view, but why are you in the police? Where's your backbone?
Yeah, there's a couple of things there. I think obviously waste of resources. You know, the police definitely have better things to be doing. I think the policeman actually feels that and understands it. That's why he said from the start that it was a load of bollocks, and I think everyone understands that as well. But realistically, it's a bit more sinister than that as well, because it's almost an admission of guilt. They're saying that, you know, they want to police how they're acting tomorrow. Well, that doesn't. Well, just because he's attending the protest doesn't mean that he's going to be acting in a way that's going to break the law. But the fact that the police have to come round and tell him how to act, I think they're trying to, put a bit of a twist on it and say, look, we know you're going to this protest. From their side, there might be a bit of a security threat. They think it might get violent. And that's why the police have been instructed to go to this man's house and give him this bullshit leaflet. So it's a bit of a sort of guilty before innocent type of situation there. But, I commend this police officer, actually, for being so open about it. The issue is that, the police are on our side as well. And I think that's really a symptom of how far left these sort of interactions are going.
The establishment is super far left. That's what it is.
Yeah.
But the thing I would say about police officers, yes, they're doing a job. They're enforcing the law. But a lot of them, police are working class. Surely, I always look at it the same as the military men. I've said it, I think, before. But I'm sure a lot of those individuals, working class men, female, they share the same public outrage and they're there to enforce something that they don't necessarily agree with wholeheartedly, which I do find is a bit of a problem because I suppose it's not being integral to what your beliefs are. But, of course, they do have to pay the bills. But a lot of them probably share that guy's outrage. Do you think he should be... Or do you think the police will sack him for that?
Well, I hope not, because he seems quite a genuine man. I'd rather have someone like that patrolling the streets and being genuine than someone who sort of buys into the ideology and supports these types of sort of big brother actions on our citizens. So I really hope not. If he does get fired, I hope he sets up a sort of GoFundMe or something like that where he can take some donations.
Well, it'll be the way the establishment will look at it, the way that the police will look at it is like a chink in the armor, so to speak. So if individuals are going like that as they try to enforce their stupid policies, then I do think he'll be a sacrificial lamb for this, just because it's going so far viral, and it does show a chink in the armor.
Of course.
And,
but the issue here is not the policeman, it's the policies. And that's the core issue. If the police are, you wasting resources to put leaflets through protesters' doors, and there's a public outcry of the reaction of the police officer. Well, you have to have sit down with the police officer and say, okay, do you think there's something wrong with us doing this? And it comes into this sort of big brother sort of totalitarian state, this like surveillance state. This means that they're monitoring these protest groups. And this means that they're taking down names, taking down addresses, and they're managing this, which comes into the sort of the Online Safety Act. They are managing this type of conversation. They're managing the dissent that's happening with the sort of the talk about the government right now. And so there is police resources, and that is underway of surveilling this type of discussion.
Do you think the same police approach would be there for sort of far left protests, Free Palestine, stand up to racism, all of these kind of things? Do you reckon they'll be going door to door on the eve of such occasions and handing them leaflets on how to behave at such?
No, because that's government funded. That's funded by the workers' union. So, they already know them protesters. They've got them on payroll. So, I don't think they'll be managing that, because I think that's intentional why they're there, It's funny because we always see these counter-protesters have the exact same signs. And I've seen it personally. So when I went to the Tommy March last year, we walked past one of these vans, and the van was packed with these like "say no to racism," "refugees welcome here," and there was maybe like 3 people there. They had more signs than people. And we saw it firsthand. And someone went. We were holding the British flag. I was walking with about a group of 4, and one of them went absolutely mental at us, calling us racist and fascist, and we just ignored them and kept walking. But wow, we saw it all, And I feel like, this stand up to racism, they're diverting government funds and hiring protesters in order to create a conflict there. And, if the government is trying to elicit a reaction from peaceful protesters, and they are guilty in any violence that comes out of these protests. And, I don't think they'll be managing the sort of Palestinian marches that were happening last year as well. They won't be managing that like they are this, because the Palestinian marches aren't directed at the government. Yeah. They're directed at a foreign...
Well, they are kind of, actually. The Palestine ones are a little bit.
Okay, so they're directed at the government's response to the Palestine thing. Yeah, that makes sense.
We've seen another thing as well, by the way. So there was news over the weekend as well with regard to, I mean, did you see it about the 500 arrests as Palestine Action? So Palestine Action, of course, prescribed as a terrorist sympathizer group or whatever it is, an organisation. Terrorist group, Palestine Action, of course, prescribed within the UK. And a total number were handcuffed over the weekend. 522 people were arrested for a protest. But guess what? Every single one of them at the Central London protest have been released after police make over the 500 arrests. So we seen last summer with individuals, of course, been arrested for saying hurty words, individuals holding placards, and then getting jailed for such a long time. But now a terrorist group, or supporting terrorist group, Palestine Action, they had 522 people arrested. So a terrorist group that are in the eyes of the government, and now every single one of those have been released.
Seems like a bit of a show.
So they broke the number of arrests for a single protest event, and that was 339 before, but now that back in 1990. So a 35-year record, and these individuals had broken it, and every single one of them have been released.
Right. Well, that does seem like a bit of a show, really. The headline there, over 500 arrests, but it takes 30 seconds to dig into it, and none of them got charged and were released in the same day. So that seems, I mean, what is the point in labelling this group a terrorist organisation if you're not actually going to follow the law that you've literally just implemented? That seems ridiculous. And it was labelled a terrorist organisation after the attacks on the military base. Is that right?
Yeah, that's why, Basically, they went into one of the RAF bases and sprayed the plane.
Yeah, which is a massive security breach there.
Yeah, I don't know how they did it in the first place, but yeah.
So
you can see it's treated a little bit differently. I mean, if there was I don't know, so to speak, and I don't condone such behaviour, but say if there was a neo-Nazi group that was prescribed as a terrorist organisation, those individuals were protesting in the same place, there were 500 arrests, would you expect 500 of those people to be charged?
I'd expect 500 short videos that the Home Office would release and compilations of grabbing them off planes like they did last year with the protests. I would see massive amounts of propaganda and media made by public resources claiming they're stomping Nazis, we're not saying we're in support of that, but I think there is a bit of a double standard there. I think that's quite interesting, and I don't know why these people are so sort of vocal about this. I mean, the Palestine-Israel thing is something that obviously is a massive cause of debate, but then again, we have our own issues in this country. Britain first. That is the principle here. We need to focus on our own issues. We need to focus on our own sovereign nation. We need to, as you say, focus on the closest crocodile to the canoe. And we have plenty of issues like the massive deficit, like, getting rid of our military bases and hiring them out for 100 years, and the illegals and the massive fraud that's happening in government.
But a lot of these far left protesters, of course, do ignore those issues that are currently ongoing in the country, or some of them probably don't see that as an issue. Have you got anything more on the UK, or did you want to go?
Yeah, so I've got
hop over the pond.
So I've got a little bit on Keir Starmer. Now, I've done a bit of digging. And no, this isn't new news, but I think it's something we need to highlight about the history of Keir Starmer and his sort of political leanings when he was younger. So it was a Daily Mail article that happened around last year. And it highlights a sort of very shady history of Keir and his political activism as a young university student. He was 23 years old. And there was reports of him joining or going to then Czechoslovakia to work on it was sort of a stand or like a statue or something, a bit of philanthropy work. But the problem is here. So it was a communist. So it was a communist country at the time. It was part of the USSR, and he was one of 17 students that was behind the Iron Curtain to restore a memorial to victims of Nazi atrocity. While the volunteers had sort of noble intentions, I guess, they were being monitored by people of the USSR with more sinister motivations. So there was a bit of investigative journalism. So basically they kept on file all of their documents, driving license, things like that. And this was released by the Czech Cold War State Security Service archives. Essentially, they had top USSR spies that would role play as group leaders for this camp. And what they were doing is they were looking to see if any of these Western people could be used as assets to promote communism within the West. So you had people from America, a lot of people from European countries as well, like Netherlands, and obviously you have Keir Starmer, who is there. Now, we don't know whether Keir was identified as a potential asset for the communist regime, but he was part of this group that was surveilled by USSR spies. So, you extrapolate that, and we're not saying he was or he wasn't, but very sinister, obviously, with how things are going today. And what I've actually done is made a comparison between the structure of the USSR and the structure of the EU. And I think really the EU is a modern day Soviet government. So with both systems, you have centralized authority. So they feature a central bureaucracy overriding local authorities. This is where decisions are made from the center. So it was Moscow for the USSR, now it's Brussels. And this reduces national sovereignty. Next, you have obviously unelected elites in control. So the USSR obviously had Moscow's supremacy. Republics had nominal sovereignty but followed central directives. And in the EU, unions of the member states are pooling sovereignty. So EU law privacy means that national laws yield to EU laws. So in both contexts, the union level supersedes the individual components. This creates a sort of layered hierarchy where the whole dictates to the parts. And you have an ideological uniformity with both. So the USSR promoted sort of communism, atheism, and collectivism, and they controlled dissent, which was suppressed through propaganda and censorship. Now that sounds quite familiar to what we're living in today. Yeah. And the EU promotes these things like European values. We saw the president of the EU sort of label herself as a European, but not as a German, which I thought was quite interesting there, the use of vocabulary. So they promote things like multiculturalism, environmentalism, and sort of so-called human rights. And that's enforced through funding conditions and legal sanctions. So what we're seeing is some of the member states go against this sort of propaganda from the EU. This is countries like Poland and Hungary, where they're flat out refusing to take any refugees of sort of Muslim faith. They've both taken refugees from Ukraine, which I think are legitimate refugees.
Well, obviously, yeah.
But, they're refusing to take people that don't sort of integrate into their society. And we've seen with Hungary, they've had massive sanctions and massive fines from the EU. But they're standing strong, and they don't want to see an erosion of their culture, which really is the EU's sort of main goal. They don't want member states to have their own sort of cultural identity. They want all of them to be European, and they want to sort of push their own agenda to the member states.
Just a quick question on Poland and Hungary. You see they're sort of refuting what the European Union are actually doing. Why don't we see a Hungsit and a Polsit exit, similar to what Britain did?
I think
why haven't we seen that happen over the last couple of years, or do you think that's something that's going to happen in imminently?
Yeah, so they used the sort of free trade agreements within the EU as leverage to push their sort of propaganda and agenda. You know, countries have to make a choice. It's either they keep their sovereignty and their national identity, or they give away some of that sovereignty and national identity in pursuit of the free market and the trade opportunities that open with the EU. So this is the key here, that the EU do not want for you to keep your sort of national identity, which may go against the sort of propaganda and the social programming that they want to push onto your citizens. So that's the key here. They're sort of giving up that sovereignty. Now, again, with the expansionist tendencies of both, the USSR sort of absorbed territories and created satellite states. That's the exact same processes that the EU are doing. So they want to integrate new states, requiring adoption of EU laws, which influences neighbours via association agreements. So they both pursue assimilating entities into the union's framework, and that sort of standardizes the law and the economics to extend influence. So they're using this free trade as leverage to push their propaganda. And in terms of sort of propaganda and education, with the USSR, they had state-controlled media and education to foster loyalty to the Union. And with the EU, they have EU-funded programs and communications promoting European identity and integration, which is exactly what we saw Ursula talk about. This sort of European identity and European solutions to European problems. Well, what about French solutions?
Yeah.
What about German solutions or Italian solutions? So I think you're right. That's a great point you put there. I think over the next 10 years, you are going to see the EU dismantle. The EU was really put up as to combine the economies of Europe in order to compete against America. That was its main sort of goal in its creation. You know, together they were stronger. But the issue is that you have unelected bureaucrats who are the head of these decision-making processes, and they are only voted on by EU sort of parliamentarianisms. So that's the main problem there, is that none of these laws are voted on by the sovereign states' people. It's sort of this unelected bureaucracy that sits above all of the member states that dictates laws and legislation. So I'm glad we're out of it, but the issue is here that we still have EU laws.
Yeah.
So the ECHR was first made by the Council of Europe. Now, the Council of Europe was the thing that kind of sort of preceded the EU, but its main focus was sort of human rights, and it was made in the fallout of World War II. So we still have these EU laws in this country, and the EU laws were implemented in, I think, 1996, and they were implemented into the UK as law. And after that, we saw. So what that did is it gave British people the right to take the Home Office to a court, and the right to sue the Home Office. And that's where we saw things like Keir Starmer, who was a barrister at the time, suing the Home Office over benefits rights to illegal immigrants and refugees. So we've seen how this EU law gets sort of twisted and interpreted in a sort of quite a vile, insidious manner. And right now we're seeing the fallout of them laws.
Interesting. It's like, you make some really good points about the comparisons of the USSR and the EU, and I can see it. You can see it as well, and along with the lady in charge, unelected as well. You know, who voted for her to be in place. You know,
exactly. And this is really the issue. And you know, I think we did the right thing in leaving the EU,
but we still have like a bit of a noose around the neck with regard to a few of the things. And the thing with Keir Starmer, you know, and some of the previous governments, they haven't really navigated Brexit the right way that people were sort of wanting to see. You know,
Yeah.
we're still in bed with them a little bit. You know, we still are. And with Keir Starmer, he's always trying to cozy up with them even more with regard to certain things. So you can definitely see where his sort of values. Loyalties lie, and that's certainly with the EU, and he kind of likes all of this stuff. You know, he's never really distancing the UK away from it. In fact, he's getting us closer and closer with everything.
Exactly, and I think that starts with the sort of propaganda he had as a child, as a 23-year-old, very young and impressionable. Obviously, going to a USSR country, and you know, being around that sort of propaganda, being around USSR spies as well. I think that really creates the framework of his current political leanings today.
Yeah.
And you're right. The issue is here that we left the EU so we could have sovereign control of our laws and you know, to stop immigration. Yet the Conservatives had nearly 8 years in power since the since we made that election and since we left the EU, and yet they did absolutely nothing. They had multiple times that they could leave the ECHR, and you know, it doesn't sound good as a headline. Oh, the UK leaves the European Convention of Human Rights. That doesn't sound good. But the issue is here, well, we can just create our own human rights that don't have the loopholes in it, that aren't from 1951, that are actually updated and provide, you know, actual defence and control of our waters and borders. So I think that's really the main issue there, is that we're using these old frameworks that have been, you know, misconstrued by lawyers today in order to allow these super high rates of refugee claims get accepted. And there is clear fraud, as I mentioned in the previous episode, with the asylum seeking sort of legal legislation there that we covered last time. And you know, there is no way out of this unless we leave the ECHR.
Yeah, well, we'll have to probably wait another 4 years until that probably happens, and it's not going to happen under a Labour government watch. Moving away from Europe a little bit, unless you've got something else to say on it, I did want to speak a little bit about the Zelensky and Putin meeting, of course, taking place in Alaska, of course. Donald Trump, the main man behind this. We touched upon it a little bit, of course, in the podcast before, but we've got a date essentially, and we've got a time, a place on where these meetings are going to proceed. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so this will be the first time that Trump and Zelensky have met since the war, so I think it's going to be very historic.
Well, since the spat, no? In the White House. Zelensky and Trump.
So
you mean Putin and Trump?
Zelensky and Putin.
Oh, sorry, yeah. So you said, because you said Zelensky and Trump.
Oh, apologies.
So yeah, Zelensky and Putin,
Yes. So the first time they have met since the war started, that's Putin and Zelensky. You know, they've been sort of communicating via Trump as like a proxy.
So this is the first time they're face to face. This is going to be huge.
It's going to be massive, and I don't know if it's going to be sort of filmed or televised, but I do wish it is.
It should be.
I hope so.
The White House. But what do you think is going to come on? It's a big moment in this war. It's a big moment in this battle.
And I think there's going to be a lot that's happened behind the scenes to get to this point. In terms of sort of laying out the agreement on which both men are sort of happy with. Realistically, I think Zelensky is going to be the one who's going to need the most turning, because he's the one that's probably going to have to give up some of the sort of land rights of Ukraine. I don't think he's going to get the Donbass region back. I think he's going to, and as well, you know, with the sort of wartime legislation in Ukraine, it means that they can't have general elections. So as soon as the war's over, there's going to be a general election, and he's most likely going to get booted out. So I think that's why he's actually wanted to prolong the war, so he stays in power. And he can sort of milk the gravy train that's coming in terms of arms and things like this. So it's going to be very interesting. But the war can't go on forever. And I think if Trump actually gets a peace treaty between the two, you know, this is going to be massive. And I think he's entitled to probably something like a Nobel Peace Prize or something like that.
Do you think he's the mastermind behind this? Without Trump, would this meeting be going ahead? If it was, say, Kamala Harris that was, of course, in power, do you reckon this meeting would be going ahead?
I think if Kamala was in power, the war would be 10 times worse.
Yeah, and Ukraine would be heavily funded, and it would still be going on, and all these kind of things.
Yeah, because we know the Democrats absolutely despise Russia and sort of what they stand for. We saw the sort of 150 odd billion that was sent as a gift from the US. What Ukraine are going to have to do is give up some of their mineral rights as well, which I know Trump is eyeing up. So it'd be interesting to see how that's sort of incorporated into the deal. And as well, you know, the elections in Ukraine, we might see a pro-Russian government in there.
Yeah, that would certainly be a different twist in the whole occasion.
Yeah, and you know, if the people vote for that, then the people vote for that. Who are we to say how they should run their sort of government?
Yeah.
And, you know, it'd be interesting to see how that pans out as well. But realistically, this is a step in the right direction, and I'm eagerly waiting for the results of this talk to come ahead. Now, we know Trump is very principled in a lot of these sort of topics, but one of the topics he has been very principled on as well is the deploying the National Guard to sort of solve these homeless issues. Now,
I've seen this morning, yeah?
Exactly. There's been a recent revelation. He's deployed the National Guard to descend on Washington and vows to evict homeless at the end, to end the sort of crime, murder and death in the capital. Now, I'm not too sure where they're going to go. Are they just going to get moved out of DC or out of Washington State? I'm not too sure about that. But the issue is this was sort of, it was pushed on by one of the Doge employees or volunteers whose code name is Big Balls. So that's what he calls him. Yeah, young guy. He's only 20, 21 years old. But he tried to stop, I think it was like a carjacking or someone getting mugged, and got viciously beaten up by 3 or 4 people. And this guy, sat alongside Elon Musk and Trump at the age of 20 odd. And, so it got very serious, obviously, because of this beating. And I think Donald Trump wants to end this sort of crime spree that's happening in DC. But yeah, I think it's good. Obviously, there's homelessness everywhere. I think the US, has a massive pandemic of homelessness and sort of street drug uses. And it's going to take a lot more than just moving them somewhere else to sort of fix the problem. I think there's a deeper systemic issue there with sort of fentanyl. You're seeing fentanyl from Chinese drug companies be shipped over to Mexico and also the Venezuela as well.
Venezuela, he's issued that $50 million arrest reward if, of course, they get him arrested.
Exactly, yeah. And we saw, about 50,000 Americans die from fentanyl every year. That's mainly from China. And one of the reactions that Trump has gone is to designate cartel groups in South America as terrorist organization. So it technically means that he can use drone strikes against them, which is kind of insane.
Wow.
But we'll see how he reacts there. I'm not sure how that would go for foreign relations, just drone striking sort of other countries in South America. Yeah. But the issue is here that hundreds of thousands of Americans are dying because of the fentanyl coming in from the south. So to protect the health and nation, I think it's a valid response.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. Keeping on the subject of Donald Trump, this is like a few days old, but still is kind of on the situation with regard to us. But Donald Trump sends 250 illegal migrants to Rwanda as the US takes advantage of the £700 million scrapped UK deal. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's pretty high IQ chess from Trump there. We pay for all the infrastructure to be made and the deal to be made there, and then we back out of it, and the US just swoops in.
Keir Starmer backed out of it. Yeah. The Labour government backed out of it.
Yeah, and I had really high hopes for the Rwanda deal.
It would have definitely worked. It was a place where they could have been deported. We didn't even get any flights off the ground because they scrapped it before it actually happened. So it was far too early to say. Everyone talks about it now in politics. Even I think Labour go, well, the failed Rwanda scheme. It's like, didn't even start.
Yeah, they're the ones that pulled the plug.
Yeah, he's the one that pulled the plug on it. it, I didn't say it. 700 million quid, like, just gone.
Yeah.
And Trump's like, yeah, okay, we'll have that.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's high IQ, you know, and that is around sort of illegal immigrants that don't want to be deported back to their home countries. And so, okay, cool, you go to Rwanda then, and have a nice life. But the issue is here really is that they should be coming back where they came from, and you know.
But Rwanda's better than being on our streets. Do you know what I mean? Or the way they're seeing it, Rwanda's better than being on the US streets, you know?
Yeah.
It was better. It's a win-win at that moment in time because it gets them out of the place. And yes, we're paying for this. Well, we would have been paying for these people to be going over to Rwanda, but it's still, you know, it in a way, kind of, I do think it's actually really a good idea because it kind of appeases both sides. Mm-hmm. Well, you'll always find an argument elsewhere, but, you know, the far left would be like, well, they're facing war and persecution. Well, Rwanda's safe because it's a place that we're hosting them. They're going there. Mm-hmm. And I suppose the right or the centre, they're looking, well, they're off our streets. They're not in a hotel within our country. They're not infiltrating. They're not living amongst the people next to schools or whatever. So I do think it was a deal that could have appeased a lot. I mean, you're always going to get people that are pissed off with it, and the far left would say, no, they should be here in the UK. They should be here. They should be here.
They're safe here. They're
safe here. But like Rwanda was, they were going to be safe. So it's a shame that we did scrap it. Mm-hmm. But yeah, Trump certainly making the most of it.
Yeah, and he's had similar deals with El Salvador as well, as we mentioned before.
Yeah.
You know, if you give an illegal immigrant, an invader, two options, it's either you stay in jail, and you stay in this kind of solitary confinement, or you get to choose what country you fly to. If you don't choose, you get sent to jail in El Salvador, or you go to Rwanda. I mean, they're gonna choose the flight option, right? Mm-hmm. At least they're free in a country. At least it's not the country they want to be free in, but at least they have their freedom back.
And they're far, far, far away from us.
Oh yeah, as far as possible. As far as possible.
Have you got any more to add for today?
No, I think we've covered everything I wanted to cover there.
Through everything. I mean, it's been quite an action-packed one as always. But yeah, I mean, guys, Monday, Wednesday, Friday is the day for the podcast. We're still finding our feet. It still was working. But we really appreciate the feedback and stuff like that. And at the time of recording, we are closing in on 5,000 subscribers. So please do hit the old like button, hit the subscribe button, and most importantly, get your feedback. What do you want to hear more of? What do you want to hear less of? Let us know down there in the old comment section below.
We make sure to read all the comments there. And a lot of you have really good ideas, you know. I've been getting very inspired by your comments, and, you know, you're very informed, so we really like to read them. So, yeah, let us know what you think down in the comment section below. Do you think the EU is really just a new sort of twist on the USSR's structure? And, yeah, we'll be back on Wednesday with a brand new episode.
Yeah, thank you, guys, and we'll see you all in the next one. Take care.
Peace.